Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Lewis Speaks 2021, and today I want to talk to you all about the ties that bind. I realized something today. You know, I realized that in the gay community, oftentimes guys feel that it's easy to ghost you and leave because you really have no ties. When I think about a marriage, marriages, they have children, they have homes, they have, things that are interwoven and that make it very difficult for one or both partners to leave. With these gay hookup acts and this gay lifestyle, very rarely do you find anybody who you can create those ties with. We're so good at building fluid bonds, we're so good at building trauma bonds, but we're not very good at building ties that bind. And I'm just so tired of this life. I gotta be honest, I'm sick of gay life. You know, it's exhausting. Trying to find someone that's decent, trying to find someone that's loyal. It's just like the road to nothingness. And I know that this exists also in heterosexual couples and heterosexual relationships, but there's differences. At least in a heterosexual couple, something, you know exactly what you're getting. In the gay community, there's sexual misrepresentation. You have tops claiming that they never bottomed before, and fact is, you come to find out that they were bottom whores. Basically, they just won't bottom for you because they don't think you're masculine enough. They don't think you're sexy enough. They don't think you are enough to bottom for. So bottoming is a privilege that's denied you because of this perception of your masculinity or your other attributes. It's just ridiculous. So that's one difference between the heterosexual and the gay lifestyle, the sexual misrepresentation piece. But it's also these ties that bind. I realized something. When you get into a relationship with someone and you want it to last, you have to make sure that you guys have ties that bind, that your lives are so inextricably interwoven that if one person decides to go, you know, it'll definitely damage the entire relationship, you know? Or if one person decides to cheat, one person decides to do something, it means their own life. Because to be honest, it's only when someone's life is at jeopardy are they willing to reconsider things. You have to make it so that way when you're in a relationship with someone that should they decide to step out, it'll hurt them, you know? Because everything else is just a bunch of nonsense. I've just been thinking a lot about the ties that bind and also fidelity. A lot of the relationships that I've been in, these men have been unfaithful. They've been emotionally unavailable, unfaithful. It all started with the heart. Because a lot of times we think, okay, where does it start? Where does infidelity start? Infidelity starts in the heart. And then it moves on up to the eyes. So then you notice that they start to have a wandering eye. And then before you know it, it moves on down to the freaking body parts. And then before you know it, they're cheating on you. So please, and I would say this, infidelity goes from the heart to the eyes to the mind. And then before it's, like I said, once it's in the mind, once a person's thinking about it, and they're watering that thought, before you know it, the body follows suit. Like they say, the mind controls the body. And I start to think, when I think about my past relationships, and I start to really examine them and go through, I guess, from the moment we met to the moment that we just no longer speak. When you think about that and you really examine it and you really unpack it, you start to realize there were a lot of things you missed because you were in your own head. You were living out this fantasy. You didn't make sure that you had ties that bind. You were too busy trying to not be that clingy or not be that overbearing one in relationships or not be this. You're so busy trying not to be something instead of enjoying a relationship. I gotta be honest, it's very difficult to enjoy relationships these days because you're always wondering when someone's going to just get bored with you, step out. You're always wondering at what moment are they going to decide they no longer want this. You know how crazy that's an awful way to live. And I know in these relationships with men, I always wonder when I start this, okay, this is nice in the beginning, nice love bombing phase. But how long is it before he gets bored and decides to step out? How long before he decides to go and sleep around? And some people say this is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Not really. It's just after a while, after so many experiences, you start to know the end before the beginning. You start to see the warning signs. Over time, you start to recognize the same signs. It's the same old thing, the same old thing. You done saw this movie before. I saw this movie before. It's a rerun. I know when a man is losing interest. I know when he's getting bored. I know when he's starting to have thoughts about creeping and cheating. I already know that. And I'm just tired of always feeling also like I gotta sit up here and do tricks. I gotta jump through hoops and try to juggle and try to keep his interest, or else he's gonna be off to the races. It's just better to be single. Really, because at least you could sleep at night. At least you could just rest your aching mind, and you don't have to worry about somebody cheating on you, bringing you back some STD, bringing you grief. I feel sorry for those in relationships. For anyone out there in relationships, you have my sympathies. Because being in a relationship these days means that you have to be a doormat. You have to allow people to walk all on you and just abuse you. At least when you're single, you can do what you want, go where you want to go without having to explain yourself to anyone. You are your own boss. And yeah, sometimes it gets a little lonely. But you know something? I'd rather a little loneliness and a little solitude than a life of hell. I'd rather my peace and dealing with loneliness than having company and living in grief. It ain't worth it. It ain't worth it. So for those who decide to get into relationships, that's your choice. But if you do decide to do that, make sure that you have some ties that bind. Make sure that you guys share a deed on something. You're going half on something that, it's going to take work to get out of, Because I've noticed that if you don't have that, you don't have any ties that bind, people can just walk out of your life easily. So if you're smart, make sure that you have some shared investments that are inextricably linked together. So that way you have yourself covered on the back end. Because that's relationships nowadays. That's how it is. You always have to have a plan B. You always got to make sure that you are going to be okay when the situation ends. That's life. So I think they call that contingency plans. That's what basically prenuptial agreements are based on. We all have high hopes that this will last forever, but we also know that forever don't last too long these days. So just in case that forever is temporary, at least you got yourself covered on the back end. And that's life. So this is Lewis Speaks 2021, encouraging everybody out there, get yourself some ties that bind and make sure that someone is down for you. Because at the end of the day, you are all you have. Lewis Speaks. Peace.